So without further ado, I'll introduce Charles Pfeifer. And so his program tonight pertains to Prothonotary Warblers. I know Charles through the zookeeping world. He's spent a number of years working at various zoos, including Audubon Zoo in New Orleans and Jackson Zoo. He was a member of the Hurricane Katrina storm team that went through the Audubon Zoo, and he stayed there during and after to maintain that facility there. Charles is active in Jackson Audubon, Orleans Audubon, Louisiana Wildlife Federation, Orleans Sierra, and the Delta Chapter Sierra. So without further ado, take it away, Charles.
Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I appreciate the invitation. And excuse me, this is the very first Zoom PowerPoint I've ever done. And first, let me ask it that if everybody can hear me.
Yes, can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
And you can see a Prothonotary Warbler.
Yep.
Yes, very beautiful.
Okay. The Prothonotary Warbler project is the signature conservation project of Jackson Audubon. As a matter of fact, it's on our chapter logo. And it really can be said we do have a passion for Prothonotaries. And why not? This is a drop-dead gorgeous bird, and it's a bird that needs our help in terms of conservation and keeping them going into the future. This is a mill, and I would like to say that all of these photos are from me, but really they're by Bill Stripling, who is a member of Jackson Audubon and an excellent photographer. There's a couple I took that don't involve such skilled bird photography, but he did all the bird photography, the nice close-up photography. So why a nest box program for Prothonotary warblers? Well, first of all, the Prothonotary warbler goes by a variety of names: golden swamp warbler, swamp canary, Protonotario citrica, and to us, mostly known as Prothonotary warbler. And the team that we have that takes care of the birds and runs the nest box project is called the Prowl team. Prowl is ornithological shorthand for Prothonotary warbler, and the term Prowl team is sort of cut on. Our project is located at LeFleur's Bluff State Park, which is like a 305-acre park in between the Pearl River and Jackson, the city of Jackson. And that particular geography will have an importance a little bit later on in the program. And as you can see here, the Prothonotary warbler has a fondness for moss, using moss in the nests. The males use the moss. They start off the nest with moss. The female builds most of the nest, but a lot of it really ends up being a lot of moss amongst some other things. So you might say, well, there's approximately 1.6 million Prothonotary warblers in the United States, the breeding population, where they mostly all come, except for a few in Canada to breed. 1.6 million. So you might say, well, that's pretty good. That's a ton of Prothonotary warblers, except for the fact that they've declined 40% since the 1960s. And this is the time to get a bird or mammal or any species that's declining, and work with them before they're endangered, where you have a good population, and you can avoid some of the more draconian and expensive results of the Endangered Species Act. I'm a big supporter, of course, of Endangered Species Act, but I believe that we need to get these birds where they're in population declines, but there's still enough of them where our work is much easier now than it would be if they're far more declined. So Jackson Audubon, the project started in the year 2000. At that point, it was just putting out nest boxes. And to be sure, I think this has had a big effect over the last couple of decades. I think the numbers have far exceeded in the park what would have happened if they were just using natural cavities. But we could only say that the boxes were being put out. The birds seem to be using them. There seemed to be nesting and so forth, but we didn't really know what kind of effect we were having. So we decided in 2018 to start our project, the actual Prothonotary Warbler project, in which we checked the boxes weekly, documented what they were doing exactly, nest building, egg laying, how many chicks were hatched, and how many birds were fledged. It's almost impossible to tell when the birds actually fledge. We can't be there exactly at that point when they fledge. So there's some assumptions made in which if when the fledging period we calculate to be ended and the birds are gone and there's no sign of foul play by predators, we make the assumption that they've actually fledged. So probably in the future, we'll probably try some things like maybe putting cams out to see if we can catch them going. But right now, the assumption is that under those circumstances, the birds are fledging. We do our inspections quickly. After we're done, the birds return right away. They don't seem to be that upset about it, except for a moment initially. But they do return and continue their incubation or feeding chicks or whatever they're doing. So we've documented this for the last 5+ years. And this is a typical shot of what we do. It's in a swamp. There's alligators. It's hot. There's bugs. So it's a truly dedicated team we have. The nest box, as you can see, has a fold up, depending on the box, on the side or the front, a fold up lid that we can look inside. Generally, I like the idea of predator guards, which in this case is a kind of bucket on the pole. Many of our boxes actually don't have predator guards. I would tell everybody else to use them. But and there's a ton of raccoons in this park. But for some reason, it doesn't seem like we have a real predation problem. And so there's actually only one. Prothonotary warblers are the only nest cavity nesting wood warbler in the eastern U.S. And there's only one other one in the entire United States or the entire Canada and U.S. That nests in cavities. Does anybody know what that one is? It's not in Florida. So that's the Lucy's warbler out west. Those are the only two, and Prothonotary is the only one in the east. And this gentleman here is Reese Partridge. He's the one that one of the originators, the founding fathers of the Prothonotary project in 2000. I came in about 6 years ago, so I can't claim full credit. But my purpose was to introduce some documentation into the process. And clearly, we have to use chest waders or hip waders. There's a lot of deep water. We put the boxes, the poles, a few feet out into the water, and the water is very variable as to its height. It might actually be on dry ground, or it might actually be in several feet of water. So we don't know what we're getting until we get there. So the name Prothonotary Warbler comes from clerks in the Catholic Church that wore yellow vestments, clothing, and they were called Prothonotaries. I don't know if any such clerks wear yellow anymore, maybe somewhere, but I did see online that in Pennsylvania, my home state, clerks in at least some parts of the state are called Prothonotaries. And I'm pretty sure they don't wear yellow. They're probably just wearing business suits or whatever. But that's a term that kind of has caught on from back many years and continues to this day. The males and females are very dimorphic. This is a male. And this is the difference between male and female. So the females are attractive, but the males are the ones with the very bright yellow color. So in these parts, the males come, the Prothonotaries come kind of late March, more so really starting in April. And that's when they start to nest. The males sing and defend the territory, and they defend their territory from other pairs, and usually they're pretty aggressive about it. They pop their beaks and are very aggressive. We did have two pairs that nested very close to each other. One of them was in a Prothonotary box, but another Prothonotary pair nested very close by in a bluebird box with a bigger hole, which was aimed at bluebirds. So normally we try to space the boxes out pretty far. I believe it was Audubon that recommended like 200 plus feet apart. And so that's what we try to do, but it's also possible that they can nest pretty close together. And they have a very distinctive call, a sweet, sweet, sweet call. And if you've heard it, you probably know it very well. And I'm the kind of birder that's more of a visual birder and not a birder by sound. Some of the birds are very distinctive. To me, Prothonotaries are, but a lot of them I just can't tell by their sound. I'm more of a visual birder. But Prothonotaries are one of those that, to me, are very distinctive. So in our park, LeFleur's Bluff State Park, there are birds, of course, that use natural cavities. Some of them use nest boxes. I don't think we have good numbers as to how many and what percentage use what. I can tell you that the boxes are very well used. One of the figures I had for 2021 is that we fledged 51 birds, 51 young birds, and Lord knows how many birds fledged from natural cavities. That's beyond our means right now to tell how many of which ones. But the fact remains that this is a very productive prothonotary area. If a bird is a cavity nester, cavities are always a limiting factor. If there's plenty of cavities, then less so. But it just seems like providing nest boxes is always a plus. It's definitely going to produce more young birds, more production. And the Prothonotaries are definitely a swamp forest specialist, or at least some kind of combination of trees and water. There's classic habitat with bottomland hardwood swamps that you're almost guaranteed to see Prothonotaries. And they really like that, but at least some kind of combination of trees and water, like lakefront, maybe. But usually you won't find them far from water. Obligate cavity nesters for sure. They just don't build cup nests like robins or all the other warblers except for Lucy's warbler. And this is one of the reasons why they're always under threat is that swamp forests are always something that's endangered. And one of the things I've recently heard about is the Okefenokee Swamp and the mining operation, which isn't very far from your location. Hopefully that can be stopped. But that's also prothonotary habitat. And that kind of thing is always a problem in this kind of habitat or near to this habitat. So the good news is that we can juice up their numbers with nest boxes. 1¼ inch is the perfect nest hole opening size. And that keeps out cowbirds, well-known nest parasite. Eastern bluebirds, which I dearly love, but still at LeFleur's Bluff State Park, we're trying to breed Prothonotaries. Eastern bluebirds have no problems there. They're doing fine. So we gear our efforts towards Prothonotaries. Carolina wrens, there's no way to stop them. Not that they're a huge problem, but here and there they take over a Prothonotary nest, and they're so little that hole size doesn't stop them. They can go through a hole smaller than what a Prothonotary can. Okay, let's see. Site fidelity. Prothonotaries are well known to return to their same breeding sites year after year. And when they return, as part of our nest box project, when we inspect the boxes, we never touch the chicks or the eggs. There's oils on the fingers that could be transferred and harmful to the chicks or eggs. So we just don't do it or wear latex gloves if we have to, but we just avoid it pretty much. Another issue is forced fledging. If the chicks are close to the 10-day fledge period, and you open the box, inspect it, you might cause the birds to leave prematurely. And a process is called forced fledging. So when it comes to, well, since we document everything, we know when the fledge period is coming to an end, when they're about to fledge. So we just don't open the box at all. We don't want the young birds to leave before they're fully ready, which means a little bit of a degradation of what our data gathering is, but we'll take that. We'll take that as opposed to making the birds leave too prematurely. So Prothonotaries are kind of picky about being cavity nesters, and they're kind of picky about being around water. But other than that, they're not really that picky about where they nest. They'll go in gourds. They'll go on people's front porches. I think ideally it's better to have the box with the proper diameter, the box with the proper measurements, and the 1¼ inch nest hole to maximize their chances. But this is what they do. They're not that. The vice president of our Jackson Audubon Society has Prothonotaries that come to our front porch every year, which is good, and I'm glad that they're so adaptable. But I like the idea of providing the best possible box with exact, precise nest hole that they can, and that will keep out any other competitors, cowbirds, bluebirds. So I guess both sexes build the nest and feed the chicks. Although it sounds like the males kind of start the nest with some moss, and the females do the bulk of the nest building, but they feed the chicks, and only the female incubates. The incubation is 12 to 14 days. So all these facts about incubation, the fledging period, kind of rules how we deal with the birds, whether we want to not force fledge them. And it kind of governs how we deal with each nesting pair, each box. We do things that won't upset them too much, which means that we don't get the precise data all the time, but it does protect the birds and their breeding and their rearing of chicks. So most of the Prothonotary warblers nest in the eastern part of the U.S., especially kind of in the southeast, but also as far north as Canada, but not that many in Canada, and they're considered an endangered species in Canada. So I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and there are some in Pennsylvania, although I've never seen them. Really, their stronghold for breeding is southeast U.S. And excuse me. And one of the most amazing things about these birds is that the population in Louisiana, Arkansas, and probably Mississippi, but that needs to be established, migrate at night across the Gulf of Mexico. There's a protein in the eyes of European robins that has been discovered called cryptochromes, and that enables them to migrate And I'm pretty sure that we'll find that Prothonotaries and other neotropical migrants are using the cryptochromes to use the magnetic field at night over that big distance to fly over to the Yucatan. So other birds in the eastern population, like South Carolina, I guess Georgia, Florida, take a more easterly route through the Caribbean, down through into South America. But there's a lot of zigzagging going around. Different birds take different routes, and it's not a beeline, to be sure. Sometimes they seem to take their time, and they meander their way down to a location that we'll talk about in just a moment. But I think it's quite amazing that the birds are flying. A lot of them are flying across the Gulf of Mexico at night, these small little birds, and they're able to use, probably, we think, the magnetic field, possibly also stars, and they find their destination on the Yucatan Peninsula. So recently, in the last few years, we've learned that something very important by attaching nanotags and geolocators to the Prothonotary warblers. The geolocators, the birds actually have to be recaptured, and then the data is analyzed to find out where they have gone, where they've been. A nanotag, they locate the birds by the MODIS system, which is kind of a detection system found on the Gulf of Mexico. It doesn't sound like it's fully operational. It needs some more MODIS systems, but you don't have to catch the bird in order to find out how they're traveling. But all this stuff taken together has proven that Prothonotaries, the majority of them, winter in Colombia, a big majority. And this has profound implications for their conservation, because they cover, they're in trouble. They have concerns in North America on the breeding grounds, but they concentrate a great deal into Colombia. There are smaller areas and more important areas that have to be protected. This particular bird has a nanotag. It was misnetted in Lafitte National Park in Louisiana. So this is truly an international bird that needs international solutions and international protection. I mean, they can travel all the way from Canada, U.S., down through Central America, the Caribbean, depending on which birds they are, all the way to South America. Not all of them in Colombia, but a lot of them. That's a lot of territory to cover, and so this is a bird that needs international cooperation for them to survive. And making it more of a local issue here in Jackson. For many years, I guess since 1994, there's been a project that's been proposed called the One Lake Project. And I like to call it the worst environmental project proposal that you never heard of. If it was in California, it would be national news. But the Pearl River Basin, which includes LeFleur's Bluff State Park, is under threat by a real estate development that is masquerading as a flood control project. Their intent is, if it passes, to construct a 1,900-acre lake near Jackson and dredge the Pearl River down through 10 miles, which would affect the hydrology all the way through Mississippi and into Louisiana, which is, of course, prime Prothonotary territory, and a lot of other biodiversity as well. Many other bird species. So this is something that Jackson Audubon has been working on for many years. And you can imagine this being our signature conservation project that we take it kind of personally. We're waiting for the environmental impact statement to come out of the Army Corps of Engineers. It's been defeated over the years since 1994 many times. So we'll see what happens this time. This time they seem to have more funding than usual. So we keep fighting. So whether it's in the U.S., Mississippi, South America, it's not just about the Prothonotary warbler. It's about all the other wildlife, the birds, mammals, many others that exist in these habitats. The Pearl River Basin has this is according to National Audubon, 32 million birds. Many of them are migratory that aren't there year-round, but 32 million that depend on the Pearl River Basin for nesting and migration. That's an incredible number. I knew it was important, but until a little while back, I didn't realize how important it was. It's most people don't know this, but it's huge. It's huge. It's a great biodiversity area. So this is my only non-prothonotary photo. But I like swallowtail kites too. And this is another species that lives in the Pearl River Basin. This project would affect the hydrology through the basin and would affect swallowtail kites too. And there's no way to mitigate it. There would just be incredible damage. But like I said, the battle goes on. There are certainly powerful political forces and rich people behind it, but we continue to fight. LeFleur's Bluff State Park, this is where we have our Prothonotary project. Kind of classic swamp. This is really what Prothonotaries like, this kind of habitat, forest and water. And it's a National Audubon important bird area. We're working to continue to preserve it. And there's many other birds and wildlife here. I've never heard so many yellow-billed cuckoos in all my life as I hear during the right time of year. Hear them all the time. And maybe in Florida you're sick of seeing red-bellied whistling ducks. And in Louisiana I was when I lived there, but they're making a big appearance here as well. They're spreading. But a lot of neotropical migrants come here in the spring and summer and breed. Corolla warblers, many others. So one of the things I like to encourage the different chapters to do is choose their own Prothonotary Warbler. Choose a bird or habitat that they can champion, like Jackson Audubon has done with Prothonotary Warbler, and do everything you can to keep them around for the future. And with that, let me see, I think the end. Well, that question mark is I don't want us to lose the Prothonotary Warbler, but let's all work together to make sure that doesn't happen, as well as the other birds we love. So, and with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Charles. That was great. In the chat, there was a question. How many breeding pairs did you have in 2023?
In 2023, I'd have to look at the data. We have 15 boxes, 15 boxes that we check. And there's some in parts of the park that are just what we call conservation boxes that we don't check weekly. I'd have to go back and look at that data. Over half of the boxes, over half of the 15 are used. Some of them have one clutch. Some of them are double clutching. Once in a while, you have triple clutching.
Oh, wow.
Not so many there, but it's very productive. And I can look it up and email that person if they want to know about 2023.
Thanks, Charles. Another question was, how do we help advocate against one lake? What can everyone else do?
Well, when the environmental impact statement comes out, everyone can submit a comment. We're waiting for that to happen. There was a scoping comment period last year, in which the Army Corps was taking comments by Zoom or in person in Jackson or in Louisiana. There was an opportunity for Zoom comment. I'm pretty sure there was an opportunity for just like email comment. So commenting against it, probably from Florida, email would be better. And if anybody is interested in that, just let me know, and I'll let you know when that happens, when the environmental impact statement becomes available. After that, they have to schedule another comment period.
Gotcha. Thank you, Charles. Yes, please share that with Duval Audubon Society, please. I had a question too. With force fledging, with other species, if a nest is force fledged, there's higher rates of predation. The chicks have difficulty thermoregulating, etc., because they're leaving the nest prematurely. But with Prothonotary warblers, they're nesting over water. So if they force fledge, that's the end, right? Like, do they ever not nest over water? I'm just curious. It sounds like that's a really bad thing.
Well, our boxes are pretty much over water. Although if the water recedes, it might be on muddy or dry ground. But not everybody's nest boxes are over water, so their birds could fledge and not drown.
Gotcha.
Also, you hear there's this idea that Prothonotary chicks can swim. But I guess they have to be so old at a certain point. If they're too young, I think they probably can't swim.
Wow.
Yeah, but we try to avoid the forced fledging. And I think that's something we'd do for any bird.
Sure. Does anybody else have any questions for Charles? Looks like
Another
there-
one just popped up in the chat.
Yeah, looks like do they hang around water swamps on wintering grounds, Charles?
Yes, and apparently cypress, excuse me, mangrove forest, various forests on the wintering ground.
I can attest to that. Birding in Colombia along a canal, I saw one, and but I didn't know it was a prothonotary. I thought it was some crazy Colombian bird, and I spent a very long time trying to ID it, only to come to the conclusion it was a prothonotary. So I thought that was interesting.
So in Colombia, deforestation is definitely a problem. One of their strongholds is the Magdalena River Valley, which has suffered tremendous deforestation. You have illegal logging, and you have the illegal drug trade, which contributes. Apparently, the deforestation has decreased in Colombia, but I read it as deforestation in the Amazon, which I'm not sure that it helps the prothonotary that much, but a good thing. Part of, again, there's more. Well, originally there was a lot of the forest was in a perverse way protected by insurgents. Nobody wanted to go there and do logging and such. And now there's a resurgence apparently of insurgency, and they declared that a lot of the forest won't be logged. So I don't know. I would hope that the government of Colombia would take strong action to preserve all of this tropical forest for in the Amazon part and where the Prothonotaries might occur. But part of the issue is the power struggle, I think, between insurgency and the government. And I'm sorry to say that the insurgency, sometimes from what I read, is sort of pro-conservation. I would, like I said, I would like the federal government of Colombia to take a strong role in this conservation of these habitats.
Thank you, Charles. Any more questions for Charles? I was curious, how do you keep the predator baffle? How do you keep that on the pole like that? How is that attached? For the
There's
artificial
a screw.
nest.
It's kind of a screw at the top.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not the only kind of predator guard you could use, but it's one of them.
Gotcha.
And so as far as snakes are a possible nest predator, but we keep the branches away from the boxes and the poles, where they can't just come down and just go on up into the box. And surprisingly, from what I can see, despite the numerous raccoon tracks all over the place, you don't really get the impression that predators are getting into the boxes. But we do have a few in which the nest guards are up.
Gotcha. Somebody asked Charles, how high do the nest boxes need to be above the water or ground?
Well, we try to have them about head height for inspection purposes. The park is periodically flooded, where we can't even get into it, and some of the boxes can be flooded. And I don't want to be an advertiser for the one lake project. I would rather have the flooding than the one lake project. But we do have somewhat of a flood problem with the boxes here and there. Of course, on a practical basis, we need to try to have them at head height, or not much further anyway, so we can check them out.
Makes sense.
And in the big picture, that kind of works out.
Gotcha. Someone asked what Prothonotary warblers feed on, Charles.
Mostly insects. And the non-breeding season, apparently some fruit and seeds, but they're pretty big insect eater. And in Louisiana and Mississippi, I mean, you see them capturing insects, but one of the things you get the impression that they really like, because it always seems to turn up when you're looking at them, is there's a sort of a green caterpillar. I don't know what species it is, but you get the impression they like it. And by no means a specialist on that species, but they do like that insect, that caterpillar. I would like to know what species it is. I need to check it out. But
Somebody also asked Charles, do you ever clean out the nest boxes after the end of the breeding season?
absolutely. We also clean them out between nestings. Like a number of them, as I mentioned, I think double nest, double clutch, or even triple clutch sometimes. That every time they finish fledging a clutch, we try to remove the nest. I think part of that would be for eliminating any possible parasites infestation, and part of that is I think if you make them nest again, build the nest, use nesting material, I think that cycling, and just my idea, makes it kind of makes their breeding cycle go, if you know what I mean.
Gotcha. The question that came in, Charles, when do you usually start seeing them at the park? Are they there now?
They are there now. Usually like late March. They seem to be a little late this time, more like early April. But they're there now. And then they seem to stop nesting almost like clockwork at the end of July. You can have sometimes a pair go a little beyond at the end of July, but nothing comes of it. Like they might build a nest or lay eggs or something, and then nothing is produced. So I don't know about every part of the country, but that's the situation here.
Gotcha. Charles, I have another question. Aside from the great information you provided, obviously, do you have any tips for any organization or individual that would be interested in implementing a similar project elsewhere?
Mostly what I said, but I would say be patient. I mean, I've heard this story even with this project, that when you first try it out, nothing seems to happen. But if you have your nest boxes out there and they're at the right height and dimensions and 1.25 inches, I'm a big believer in 1.25 inch nest hole. If you work at it and let it go and be patient, that you'll have success if it's the right kind of habitat. But I can't tell you how many times I've heard, and like I said, from this project, that nothing seemed to happen very much to begin with, and in other projects, like the birds didn't seem to be that much interested. But I would say just keep at it.
Does anyone else have any questions on the call?
I had just thought of a quick question. You showed the one that was banded. Are many of them banded, or is it rare that you find one that's got the band on there?
Rare. We're trying to work with Eric Johnson, who's the director of bird conservation with Delta Audubon. Delta Audubon is the part of Audubon that has Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas. And we were talking about having a project, and his big project, he does a lot with Prothonotaries. He's the one that was instrumental in finding out that many of them go to Columbia. But banding our birds and putting tags, nano tags on our birds, because Mississippi, we're not entirely sure which way they go, across the Gulf or go further east and down like through the Caribbean, like Florida birds might go. So it'd be interesting to find out. But so far we haven't done any bird banding with the birds in Mississippi and LeFleur's Bluff State Park. And just observing the birds we have, you don't really see birds. They're banded birds. There's a lot of that going on. A lot of that going on in Louisiana, and most likely other states. So we would like to have Mississippi in on that too.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, that photo was probably a Louisiana photo.
Gotcha.
Yeah, a good many of those were Louisiana photos.
Very cool. Well, if there's no further questions, thank you, Charles. That was a great program. We really appreciate your time and your expertise, and we thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
And
thank you.
And if anybody has any other further questions, don't hesitate to email.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Yep. Thanks again, Charles.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it a lot.
Appreciate it.